Appreciate it. I wanted to just say thanks for having us back. This is, again, our weekly press conference that the city of Duluth is hosting. Today, we will be having Mayor Larson, in addition to CEO Scheckman, Director Chris Fleege of Planning and Economic Development, Chief Tuskin from the Police Department, and Chief DJ from the Fire Department on the call today. And so to welcome Mayor Larson, she'll start us off. Mayor Larson?
Great. Thank you, Kate. And before we begin, just want to say a couple things. My family has always supported these events happening in our home. So my helper today is Eli. So thank you for that. Kate, you have his phone number if you need us to know anything, or if the connection goes wrong, just connect with Eli, please. And big thanks to our city staff, because throughout this entire process, we have had the ability for the public to connect with us and for us to continue to provide information and updates for you in a way that is inclusive and honors your need for transparency and your deep commitment to wanting to be involved in the local level. So I am really proud of our team on these press conferences and even on our WebEx council meetings. We have over 100 people who are participating. Sometimes they're listening or they're raising their hand to ask questions. And so I know how important it is for local government to have that transparency and to be accessible. And so really, really want to thank the staff for that. Second of all, want to mention that we are seeing more budget information coming out. Yesterday, the state of Minnesota announced a projected deficit that is really a big swing, even in just a couple of months of where the state of Minnesota was going to be. I am not surprised by that number at all, and am really feel reassured, actually, that the city of Duluth, we have been tracking this pandemic so closely and monitoring it and really checking very carefully how it's going to impact all of us. Week. And at the council meeting, we, I think, are in the forefront of cities who are able to articulate that clearly, who are making decisive choices around how to protect the budget as best we can, how to continue to provide the services we can. I think you will start seeing more of that. It appears the county has sent a letter articulating their need. I know other cities are working hard on that as well. And of course, now the state of Minnesota. So what we're seeing is not a surprise to me. I do want you to know, as we are looking at the budget impacts, I let our staff know in an email yesterday that we continue to press very, very hard on federal partners and our state partners and with them to ensure that we're leveraging everything we can out of the CARES Act, not just to reimburse us for COVID-19 related expenses that we've outlined pretty clearly in previous press conferences, so I won't spend a lot of time on the budget here, but also making our case on why the city of Duluth merits reimbursement and why balancing the pandemic on the backs of our residents is not sustainable and not resilient and not in keeping with who Minnesota is. We are working really hard with the governor's office. We speak many times a week. Our state delegation has been terrific. I want to personally thank United States Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith. They have been outstanding and really reaching out regularly to ask what's happening, what do we need, how can we be included, municipalities, in the next funding bill on the federal level. I also want to just acknowledge the other cities that we're working with. Noah Schuckman and I work regularly with cities across the state, and then also through these other coalitions that I think is important for you to know about, because cities are working together, and then information is coming out from these different groups. And so that's information that we are a part of framing and putting together. That includes the League of Minnesota Cities, the National League of Cities, the United States Conference of Mayors, and then Minnesota Mayors together. So a lot happening, a lot of groups deeply involved in how to communicate. So with that, thank you for joining us today. I wanted to kind of clear some of that information off the deck before we get to some of the new information. This is our second week of a weekly press conference. Thank you to people for making it possible. Thank you to those of you who take an interest in the information that we are providing. We strive to simply deliver the information, and then you can let us know if you have questions. But it's been really important for us to make sure that we are continuing to be the steady, reliable partner that you need, also anticipating all the elements that we possibly can. While we are responding to a pandemic, we are also doing just kind of the natural and normal course of city operations. Prior to the pandemic, we had been working on inclusive language at the City of Duluth. And tonight, the Charter Commission is looking at a proposal that we have put forward to change some language in the city charter. The City of Duluth strives to be a city that is reflective of our community and deeply rooted in fairness and equity. We are working to make our city charter either gender neutral or gender inclusive. In most places, it indicates he in leadership positions or in decision-making positions. And I think, as we know, that is not the case. We are also striving to change language that can be seen as detrimental or hurtful. The city is progressing in many ways. We seek to elevate and foster cultural responsiveness by proactively removing language that is harmful or misrepresentative or derogatory. As a visible sign of mutual respect, we are proposing revisions to policy and job titles that are aligned with gender and culturally affirming and first people language, people first language. Together, we can be a city where all residents are seen and heard and valued and embraced. So for that reason, we are proposing to change the roles of Chief Administrative Officer and Chief Financial Officer to City Administrator and Finance Director. The proposal before the Charter Commission is to change the Chief Administrative Officer. That is a definition within the Charter Commission. We are removing the name chief. We are moving forward with a different set of language. The Finance Director is a position that we can simply rename. We are looking at and working with public safety to change other chief designated positions, and we'll do that in time. There are certain positions where police chief and fire chief are really a different kind of norm, and so wanting to change that within a reflective norm and what the best language is. But I'm proud that we're bringing that forward and ask for the Charter Commission support. Of course, the City Council needs to ratify any decision that is made at the charter level. Also, this week we have been working to continue to support our very diverse economy. I think one of the reasons Duluth is going to be okay is that we have worked hard over the past 30 years to build a very diverse economy. That was partly of what we had to do with changing industries, but it is something that is going to keep us more resilient, I think, than other communities around the state. So 2 weeks ago, Councillor Eric Forsman announced that the 1200 Fund had created a $1.2 million FAST grants program that would provide $10,000 grants to small businesses who don't currently have a loan through the 1200 Fund, and $20,000 grants for small businesses that do have a loan through the 1200 Fund. And I'm proud to announce that to date, the 1200 Fund Board has awarded over $700,000 in grants to Duluth businesses. This commitment, we hope, will play a role in preserving 1,000 jobs in our community. The 1200 Fund Board expects to complete their work in the coming weeks and conclude awarding remaining grant funds and begin technical grant assistance for any interested parties who had not yet been awarded grant funds. When I spoke last week, we had over 341 applications come in seeking financial support through the 1200 Fund. So this is amazing that we were able to turn this kind of money around this quickly with the kind of nimbleness that government isn't always known for, or that nonprofits in this case aren't always known for. The work that we're doing with the 1200 Fund and DITA is something that our team is incredibly proud of. They should be. This community is seeing a lot of financial impact very quickly, much faster than other communities around the state. Because we have a smart team that is really progressive, thinking quickly, and engaging people on the ground level. In addition to the resources that the 1200 Fund has offered to small businesses, the City of Duluth anticipates that DITA will continue to work in partnership with the Northland Foundation, the Entrepreneur Fund, to provide assistance to small businesses across the city as we seek to return to a normal commerce. Now, normal commerce will be different, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that we're doing to support business. But I want to make sure that we are also taking a pause to specifically reflect on the value values and need for this community to invest in businesses that are owned by women and people of color. We continue to do great outreach from the point of our staff, whether it's 1200 Fund or DETA, economic development, community development, targeting our resources to ensure that we are investing equitably and fairly in visions that are expansive and continue to broaden our economy. So we continue to do recruitment to make sure that we are reaching all of the corners of the economic market as we possibly can, and we welcome your feedback if there's anybody that we have missed so far. On the City Council agenda for the week is a series of low-income housing tax credit applications that are coming forward. Now, before the pandemic, we had a housing task force that had been meeting. They, during the pandemic, had presented a very robust report. They worked incredibly hard. We actually had a plan to make additional and strategic and significant investments in the expansion of affordable housing in the city of Duluth. We are not moving forward with that plan as it exists because we are working to continue to keep the city operating and moving forward. We will get to that. There will be a time in which we will have the bandwidth, the financial resources, and the staff support to do that. However, in the meantime, the state continues to operate a tax credit program. It is one of the ways in which we can get large-scale affordable projects going quickly to help fill the budget gap that we have talked about so often that exists when you're seeking to ensure affordability while also meeting the market prices for creating and building affordable housing. Each year, the city of Duluth supports housing projects applying to the state of Minnesota for low-income tax credits, low-income housing bonds, or tax increment financing. Resolutions of support are approved and required by the City Council and used as a part of the application to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. MHFA then reviews our applications and alerts developers to their decisions in October. So it is a very long process, but it starts now. This year is no different than years past. We are very proud to support a total of 7 low-income housing projects. That is more than we have been able to support in the past. That is more projects ready to go, stating their case, making their case, ready to be built and brought into development than we have had in the past. And I would like to thank all of the developers for choosing to develop in Duluth, for bringing your vision of fairness, equity, justice, and housing to this community. You can find out more information on the agenda about that. And of course, we have other people on this call who can answer detailed questions. Couple of things as it relates to really striving industries here in Duluth is a Unified Development Code COVID amendment to support restaurants and tap rooms. As the city of Duluth prepares for businesses to reopen, we know that we need to do that with the health and safety of residents and workers in mind. And with that, the city is looking for ways to assist businesses to do this by removing as many regulatory barriers as we possibly can. This is where we are working on the ground level, responding as quickly as we can to the feedback that you are providing us when you're letting us know what you need as you think ahead to reopen. I'm asking the City Council to approve a resolution at Monday's meeting that would waive certain fees and modify certain processes to allow for an effective response to the COVID-19 epidemic. The intent is to allow for greater ability to quickly establish social distancing practices at local businesses and to allow for new business innovations such as curbside pickup areas on a temporary basis. Additional activities on sidewalks. So part of this is expanding seating into sidewalk areas, creating a little more elbow room. In some cases, it will be using adjacent parking lots that are privately owned, but still would need to get city approval to space out and to give people more space to recreate, to congregate, and to safely work. So additional activities on sidewalks would be permitted through December 31st of this year or until the resolution is rescinded, should the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic be resolved sooner than December 31st, 2020. Access corridors for ADA access will be prioritized in all circumstances. So we are being very mindful of the access that is not just required, but makes good sense and is good for the common good. So that will be prioritized in all circumstances that are proposed for additional commercial activity under this resolution. So I would really like to thank Christy Stokes and the Greater Downtown Council for their help with this effort, for letting us know early on that vendors and businesses downtown could benefit from this flexibility and creativity. And we know that businesses across the city could benefit as well. Two more things from me, and then you're going to hear from Chief Tuscan and Chief Creuset. Yesterday, in regards to supporting our tap rooms and breweries, there was an article in the Duluth News Tribune a couple of weeks ago. There have been several articles in different media outlets about how tap rooms and breweries are responding. Here in Duluth, they have been significantly impacted by COVID-19 and social distancing and the need for what's been designated essential and what hasn't. So yesterday, Representative Liz Olson and Representative Sidney Jordan introduced legislation to help Minnesota craft breweries and distilleries weather the downturn in business as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This bill creates economic opportunity by temporarily relaxing very rigid restrictions of off-sale beverages, allowing for limited to-go sales from tap rooms and cocktail rooms. Now, other COVID-19 related legislation has helped liquor stores by helping liquor stores be deemed essential. It has helped restaurants by ensuring that restaurants can sell alcoholic beverages curbside and to-go. And it is now time to change, even temporarily, this liquor law that is very antiquated and has really devastating impacts currently for the local providers who are deeply invested in their craft, that are small business owners in our community, that are employing people in this community in places that are of social connection for so many of us. So this bill allows craft breweries with tap rooms to sell up to a 6-pack of 12-ounce containers or a 4-pack of 16-ounce containers per customer, in addition to the growlers and other vessels already permitted. So it's just a slight expansion of on sale. Sales under the provision would be permitted during the peacetime emergency and for a 60-day period thereafter. For craft distilleries with cocktail rooms, a 750 milliliter bottle or two 375 milliliter bottles could be sold during the peacetime emergency, plus a period of 60 additional days. We can help this important industry stay in business. We can help them retain workers. We can help people safely open storefronts and give back to their communities. So I'm a very strong supporter of this bill, and really want to thank Representative Olson and Representative Jordan for their leadership and help. Thank you for that. Finally, you will hear from the chiefs right after this. I understand that our educators and our students are experiencing something very difficult and challenging this semester, and that there are literally thousands of graduates and families that are seeking a celebration and closure to their educational experience, whether that's at 12th grade and completing high school or higher education. I have great sympathy for that experience, having gone through graduation with one student, and really understanding how much closure and just celebration is important with that. I can't help that celebration continue. We can't host graduations in a safe capacity right now, but I do want to help honor the hard work of our students, the support that's offered from these campuses, and just share and show a pride by this community in you and your achievements. So for that reason, I've made a decision to light the aerial lift bridge in honor of every single school in the city of Duluth that is graduating students. We have a schedule that we will be posting, and I have communicated with all of these campuses and colleges. We are going to light the bridge their chosen color, their kind of school color, on the day that they were originally planned to graduate. So this school list will include UMD, St. Scholastica, Lake Superior College. Those 3 dates are in May. Then in June, it will be the Area Learning Center, Duluth East, Duluth Denfeld, then Lakeview, Covenant, and then comes Harbor City, and then Marshall. So that will take place. The June dates are all in a row in the same week. And so it's one gesture that the city of Duluth can say to just offer, we see you, we recognize you, we're proud of the work that you did. And while we can't all lift you up and celebrate together, we want you to see that we believe in your bright future. So with that, I want to pass this over to Chief Tuscan.
Thank you, Mayor Larson. Unlike you, I do not have an assistant today. Thanks for all of you that joined the call. Important for us to be able to have an update. We haven't had a substantial update since this happened, since we went into our COVID schedules. To begin with, we'd just like to talk about some of the high points. We had the opportunity to re-engineer policing as we know it. We had to take into account that the safety and security of our community, of course, is vitally important, but also the importance of keeping our staff safe and well. And so we re-engineered our department. We placed a lot of resources on patrol, our most public-facing members of the police department, to be out on patrol. And the idea was to allow us to have opportunity to serve our community, but at the same time, also be able to respond to certainly the needs of our community's calls for service. So that has changed things tremendously for us. If you had asked me 6 months ago that the primary concerns that I would be focusing on were PPE, social distancing, incubation, periods of time where we are having people stay at home. We have a period right now where our officers are working 5 days on and having 15 days off. And the reason we did that schedule was to allow our people to have a period of time to be away from work should they have contracted this deadly virus. They'd have opportunity to be show symptoms or signs before they came back to work, because we know community spread is really what we fear most about this virus, is that it would certainly deplete our ability to be first responders. So what does it look like for us to do policing in a time of pandemic? Well, overall, the news is good. Our people are safe and well. Our morale is good. And we believe we're providing a tremendous service to our community still. It looks differently. It is certainly by phone call, by online reporting at times, certainly respecting social distancing. But we know that our Part 1 and 2 crimes are down. We've got all but 5 of our people are assigned to the patrol division. This was by design to make sure that the community sees us, that we are accessible, that we can provide a sense of safety in our community. With that, our mandated reporting is down. So many of the mandated reporters work in schools, and certainly they are not at work, and so therefore we've seen that mandated reporting is down. That, of course, is of concern for us, that we aren't having the opportunity to intercede or do interventions because we are not hearing some of those reports that would otherwise come to us. Because community is at home, we are seeing less crime, and far less crime in certainly some areas. So a typical time, this time of year, we'd see 300 calls for service. Right now, we can go anywhere between 180 and 230. So a substantial reduction in crimes. So some of the crime numbers I just wanted to cover for people that are certainly way down, and it's a great thing. Our response to burglaries is down 50%. Medicals from assaults are down 51%. Customer trouble, which often happens with businesses, one of the downturns, we're down 56%. Sexual assaults, we're down 71%. Personal injuries are down 84%. Suicide is down 88%. Robberies are down 20%. Narcotics calls are down 54%. And our DWIs are down 64%. So some of this certainly is because people are really doing a great job in Minnesota of social distancing, of staying at home. And so there are less opportunities for crime. That's a great thing for us. But it is something that we are monitoring crime trends and patterns, of course, every day. We do daily meetings with our command staff. We engage our people to be aware of opportunities for us to improve our service, to be more present. I think the mayor mentioned last week that we're doing birthday celebrations for kids to just do drive-bys. Great way for us to continue to engage our community in something very meaningful for their family, something very meaningful for that child for the rest of their life. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time or resources for us to do so. We're down, have saved over $80,000 in overtime as a result of this pandemic. And the reason for that is we are asking our officers to, while we're doing our job every day, we also aren't generating other investigations that may call for us to stay over. And we also are limiting the amount of exposure we have. So as traffic stops, for instance, our DWIs are down 64%. We are still doing traffic stops, but we're doing traffic stops when there is a compelling safety risk to our community. And those are decisions that our officers are making every day, is whether to engage or not. That is out of respect, certainly, for our officers' safety, but also for the community's safety. Investigations, we are still doing investigations. We have investigative meetings every week, every day during the week. We meet with the county attorney. They are done virtually, and we're able to track cases and offenders still. And a note on opioids, this month in April, we did see a spike in our opioid overdoses. We had also an increase in February as well. And typically we are experiencing over a 3-year total, somewhere in the average of about 13 or 14 overdoses a month. So anytime that we go above that, we certainly are looking for ways to intervene and to keep our community safe. As I've said many times before, that this is just not an enforcement component. It is also vitally important for us to do education, prevention, and of course have treatment options. So those are some of the highlights of what's been going on at DPD. We feel that we are here to serve our community. If you have a need or need emergency services, we will respond. We will be available, and we will respond to your concerns. It may look differently, it may sound differently, but we will be there for you. And we appreciate all your support that we've gotten in this community. So thank you. And with that, I think I'll have to turn it over to
Chief Creuset.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate all that information, and thank everybody for being on the WebEx today. I think we've highlighted a lot of the COVID response, things that we're doing for the fire department in previous press conferences and previous interviews. So today we'd like to focus on some of the other calls that we're doing. We have not changed any of those COVID protocols that we've discussed earlier, but we do want to remind people that we're starting, as we're moving into spring and summertime here, that we are actually seeing some of the other seasonal changes that we might see here in the fire department, and that people are hopefully experiencing some nice weather and some outdoor recreation that generates some other types of calls for us. So one of the things that we're tracking and seeing is a little bit of an uptick in recreational fire calls. I want to remind people that we are following the DNR guidelines, the state guidelines, which they have a fire ban. They're only issuing variance permits. We are not issuing city fire permits either at this time, so we'll be following those DNR recommendations. And they are actually rating the Duluth area as high in fire danger right now. We have seen a little bit of green up with some recent rainfall, but we also have a lot of winds, which dries out those smaller fuels, especially the grassy type fuels that we have in our green space here in Duluth. So we want to make sure that people are actually following the recreational fire guidelines, which can be found on our City of Duluth website. We have a tab on the City of Duluth Fire website that outlines all the restrictions or guidelines that we have for recreational fires. Some of the most common complaints that we receive are the fire's too large. People have essentially a bonfire in their backyard. We do require some sort of a fire pit, a fire ring, or a purchased pit. You can make it yourself or buy it at any local store. And that's a 3 foot by 3 foot fire ring. One of the things that we get a lot of nuisance complaints when people burn illegal materials or garbage, which creates essentially just a irritating smell of smoke. So we remind you to only burn clean wood. You can't burn garbage, you can't burn brush, you can't burn leaves, just clean firewood. And then the fire also has to be attended at all times. We get complaints for unattended fires, and usually people, they go in their house, and they think, well, I'm just going to be gone for a few minutes, it'll be fine. But especially with a lot of the winds that we've been seeing lately, it can spread quickly, it can spread without you knowing it, and then we could have a problem with your house, the neighbor's house, or some other type of increased brush or grass fires. So we're asking people to really be diligent when they're having recreational fires, and we also remind people that by city ordinance, recreational fires are not allowed in city parks or beaches. We always get complaints of fires primarily on Park Point on the beach, and it is illegal in the city to gather driftwood or bring firewood down and have a beach fire. So we ask people to, if they're having any kind of actual grilling, some of the parks, of course, city parks have grills, designated grill sites. That's fine. You can do that, but recreational fires are not allowed in city parks, only on private property. One of the things that Mayor Larson mentioned last week was that our calls for service were up this year from this time last year. We've seen a little bit of an uptick in structure fires, and so we really are asking for the public's help to follow our recreation fire guidelines, so we're not being called out to potentially police you or cite you for a call that is usually pretty easily handled if you just follow those guidelines. One of the other things that we are seeing is an uptick in water emergency calls. So we are just kind of getting into the season where we're getting into boating, windsurfing, other types of water activities. And when we get warm days, nice days like today, everybody wants to get outside, including myself. We've been cooped up for quite a long time here, and I totally understand why people want to get out. But I can assure you, and I'm sure Chief Tuscan would echo these comments, the water is still cold. As you saw from our Chief Dunk last week in Lake Superior, we wore life jackets. We tried to do things safely. So we are asking if you do go out on the water, whether you're in a boat or in a personal watercraft or some other stand-up kayak or paddleboard or whatever, make sure you're wearing a life jacket. Make sure you're watching the weather. Check the forecasts and the wave forecasts down on the beach and in the lake. So you're following just safe boating or water recreation procedures as you're out there. One of the other things that we see at this time of the year is a lot of blight complaints. Normally, we'll start seeing students moving out of the UMD and Scholastica and some of the other colleges in the area. Probably not going to see quite as much of that, where you'll see a couch on the sidewalk or other things, housing items that they're trying to get rid of. But what we're just seeing now is, since people have been home so long, that they're cleaning out their basements, cleaning out their garages, doing just some kind of spring cleaning in their personal property. And we want to remind people now that WLSSD is reopened. Their Materials Recovery Center is located at 4587 Ridgeview Road, and they're open from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Tuesdays through Saturdays. We understand that it's been difficult to actually have a place to bring any type of household waste that you're trying to get rid of. We really, really, really ask you not to dump it in the woods, not to dump it on city property or any other abandoned property. Dispose of it properly. And if you do need to report any blight, you can do that on our website. Again, our City of Duluth Fire Department website has a report or request tab. There's many different things that you can report from that tab, and one of them is a blight complaint. You can also call 730-5151. Again, that's 730-5151, and leave a voicemail. That call that will probably not be answered at this time, but you regularly check the messages on that, and then someone will get back to you if you have any blight issues. I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us, and I'm going to pass it back to Kate.
Thanks so much, Chief Creuset. As we mentioned at the top of this call, we have taken a lot of questions from you as the public, so thank you again for submitting those. We'll get to those in just a second, but also wanted to open it up to questions from the media first, and you can do that by signifying your hand raise on your option if you do have a question, or just let me know. As I don't see any right now, I will ask Mayor Larson the first question from a resident, which was, will the 4th of July celebration still happen this year?
Okay, that's a really great question. Thank you, Kate, and thank you for the resident for this question. This is something that we are actually working to decide right now. So we are following CDC, Minnesota Department of Health guidelines. I think it's unlikely we can have a celebration that's like the one that has happened in the past, where you have 5, 8, 10,000 people gathered at Bayfront. So we are looking at what is the guidance that will be coming out, and where else could we enjoy fireworks that is safe. We are looking at other sites and ones that wouldn't require as many people to congregate in one area. You think Bayfront is one that so many people could see from around the city, but that's not actually the vision line that works that well. So the short answer is we are working with the DEC, and we are working with other partners to figure that out. The long answer is there's all those factors we are considering. So thanks for the question. I think we need to make a decision somewhat soon. I have been tracking other cities. Some cities have canceled fireworks and those kinds of events through the entire summer. Some are waiting until early June even to decide that for the following month. I think we'll be somewhere in the middle. I know that lots of people are making plans for themselves for the summer, and you want to know that information. We'll give it to you as soon as we can.
Great, thanks, Mayor Larson. And just seeing that Bailey from WDIO has a question. Bailey, go ahead.
Yeah, let's see. Am I unmuted? Okay.
Yeah,
it's kind of similar question probably to what you just answered, but we've already seen Minneapolis close beaches for the summer. Other places just already starting to do that. What are what factors are you taking into consideration as you look at, everybody loves going to Park Point and stuff like that in the summer. What do you take into account?
Kate, is it okay if I go ahead? Did you have something else in mind with that? Okay.
No, that would be great.
Okay, thank you, Bailey, for the question. So we have already announced, for instance, that the Park Point Beach House will be closed until July 1st. Wade Stadium, the zoo, other things like that. Some of what we are taking into consideration is what is the guidance and recommendation we're getting? What are the facilities that would need to be open to support that? For instance, the beach house, will have bathrooms, people, sitting in close proximity to each other, some things that just may or may not lend themselves well to the guidance. We are working, our parks team is terrific. They have been working really hard on this. I think that we will be rolling out other decisions within the next week or so. The Minneapolis Park Board, I was really curious. I felt like they made that decision so early, and I was really surprised by that. And in doing a little more investigation, I learned, they're a separately elected board, but also many of their parks facilities are ones that are operating daycares, childcares, and, are things that involve parents really needing to know now to make plans for the summer. Our parks and our beach don't offer that same kind of programming element that so many parents and families and communities are reliant on. So we have a little more wiggle room there. I know people are eager to learn more, and I do know that our team is working on a plan, and it could be at this announcement next week that we will be able to say more, but it may take us a little longer too. I don't know yet, but those are some of the factors, Bailey, that we're looking at. I hope that's helpful for you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bailey. Mayor Larson, I'll give you another question as I'm not seeing another from the media. A resident had asked, if I am a business owner with questions on how to reopen my business, is there anyone at the city I can talk to about my questions?
Yes, thank you for that question, and thank you for choosing to do business in the city of Duluth. We are, as a city, we are looking at the same guidance from the state of Minnesota, the CDC, Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, in terms of how we are going to reopen city operations. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to being able to roll that out. That's my way of saying I understand. It's there's a lot to take into account. Certainly the health and safety of your staff, and depending on the kind of, whether it's a front facing or back room operation kind of business, a lot that you have to figure out. So yes, we can be a resource for you as you are doing that. We have people in the Workforce Development Center, Career Force, that are incredibly up on everything that you would need to be working on and know about. They are, of course, doing unemployment and reemployment and all of that, but they're also doing work on this and with businesses. And I actually have that number in case we got asked. So here's the phone number. It is 218. It's 302. 8400. That's 302-8400. If you call that phone number, you can be connected with someone who can help support you and help you figure out what you need to be doing.
Perfect, thank you. And then Nishay Taylor from Fox has a question, I believe, for Chief Tuscan. Nishay, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering about, it was mentioned that 13 to 14 overdoses are average a month. What is the exact number of overdoses since the pandemic started? Since there is apparently a spike, what's the difference between the numbers?
So great question. So here's our numbers, kind of running through the numbers of 2020 here so far. So we had 13 in January, we had 25 in February, 13 in March, 22 in April. And so you can see that that trend can go up and down according to what's interventions are going on in our community, certainly what's going on in people's lives. Certainly, if there is heroin coming into town where there is fentanyl is introduced to it, we certainly see our overdoses go up as well. Most important when we talk about overdoses, every one of those numbers are a human being and a human life, and so important for us to keep our community safe. And there's a variety of ways that we're doing that. Again, we can't just do it on our own, and we certainly are relying on our partners who are working in treatment. We are certainly working with our educators and doing education and prevention to keep people from getting into addictive behaviors. And so that, I hope that answers your question.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Nishay. Alejandra, I believe you also had a question for Chief Tuscan, so go ahead.
Yes, hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, just going back to the conversation about the spike in the overdose numbers, Chief Tuscan, can you just talk about what you believe is causing this spike? Do you believe that this health pandemic has had an effect to that in any way?
This is certainly a great question, a question that I certainly can't answer. I can tell you that when I look at data over the last 3 years, we've seen a number of overdoses a month be in the 20s before, and we've seen it down in single digits. This does not appear to be something that is way outside of what we typically see. While it is higher, it was higher in February, then we saw it dip, and then we saw it back up in April. So again, every one of these overdose numbers that we see monthly are oftentimes attached to certainly the source of supply, what's in that supply, and oftentimes we do see a fentanyl as a directly responsible for overdoses that we see involving opioids.
Great, thanks, Chief. Alejandro, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Ron, I didn't forget you. Just wanted to see if you had a question for the panel still. And you are unmuted, so go ahead.
Thanks, Kate. Question for Mayor Larson. The skywalks have been locked up now for weeks, and for some of the businesses that weren't non-essential, and had to keep operating, it forced employees or any other customers to use an alley entrance. Do you have any plan to reopen the skywalks anytime soon?
Ron, thank you for that question. To be honest, I'm not really prepared to answer it, and I can get back in touch with you. I know we are having that conversation again with the Downtown Council and our economic development team and such. I don't want to misspeak, and I know how important it is for people to have that connection point. For me, when we close the skywalk between the deck and over the highway, it's just like, these decisions are so difficult. So I don't want to misspeak, Ron. If it's okay with you, I'd prefer to get back in touch with you or make sure that we get you the right answer.
Sure.
Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Ron. Katie from the Star Tribune, I see you. Go ahead.
Hi, my question is probably also for the mayor. I am just wondering, with the state announcing yesterday that it's now potentially looking at a $2.4 billion deficit, I guess I'm wondering what the city is anticipating, or if you've had any guidance of how that could affect maybe local government aid or the city in other ways. I know it may be early to consider this, but I guess I'm just wondering what you are thinking after hearing that number at this point in time and how it could affect you.
Yeah, Katie, thank you for the call. Actually, it's not too early to think about this. I have been already positioning the need for local government aid to continue as expected for the city of Duluth for weeks, and actually talked with the House tax chair, I think 2.5 weeks ago, and brought this up. So while the state may not have known their forecast, I could certainly project out, really understanding ours, what that exponential impact would be for the state of Minnesota. So I do feel like we have an important story that has to be told. The state legislature will adjourn for their regular session on May 18th. And then I don't know if they'll do special session or sessions. I can't imagine they're going to get everything done before then, but that's not my job. My job is to work, chase it down the next couple of weeks. So we are working with the League of Minnesota Cities on the CARES Act and how to disseminate state funds to the city. I'm also working with other cities in terms of the message of local government aid, but I am not waiting for organizations to start that conversation. It is ones that I have been having. The other things that, the county's talking about, the state's talking about, potential diminished property tax collections, things like that. Again, not a surprise. We talked about that almost 2 weeks ago as well. The expectation we had, we said, I think it was somewhere between 5 and 20% decline in property tax, and 5% always felt like a ridiculous number. It's clearly going to be 20, if not more. And so these are resources that the state relies on, the school district relies on, cities rely on. And so again, you're going to keep seeing more and more and more coming from these publicly funded institutions on how that can really weaken the financial base. But in terms of local government aid, I did not hesitate to bring up and start making our case already.
Great, thanks, Mayor Larson. Katie, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I will kind of follow up and say, is there anything else, are you still pushing for the bonding projects, or are there any other state-related funding measures that you may be foregoing this year that you're less confident about coming through, or still fighting for?
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Yeah, we're still working on the bonding. And again, this is one of those things where you've got this pandemic going on and all of your energy and all of your focus, and then all of this other work continues to happen. And so, yes, we have bonding bill and a bonding proposal that I had actually a couple correspondences with Representative Mary Murphy, who chairs the House Bonding Committee. So yes, we are still working on that. Those are some of the big ones. And then some of these smaller bills that may seem smaller in terms of whether it's impacting breweries, distilleries, that kind of thing, are really a big deal. And these are make or break bills that can have significant economic impact here, because these are hundreds of local people who have jobs in these places that are owned by local business owners who have local investors heavily tied into it. So the ability to provide that kind of flexibility, quickly those smaller bills become really, really big deals. So while that's not a bonding bill, it's certainly one that we're tracking really closely. And then, I just have regular checkups with the governor in terms of how things are with the governor's office, in terms of how things are going with the city of Duluth, what it is we're seeing, what's new, what are we anticipating, how are we thinking through things, what's the conversation we're having, whether it's in regards to bond repayments, can we restructure that? It's about how can we ensure that they are giving us our portion of the sales tax as soon as possible, because right now there's a lag in how quickly it comes and how quickly we get the data. So lots of little things in there that add up to big things in the end.
Thanks, Katie. Mayor Larson, I know that Nishay from Fox had another question. Okay. Nishay, go ahead.
Mayor Larson, you kind of touched on it just now. You were saying how the smaller bills are important, but can you just go more into how beneficial this bill introduced by Liz Alston to temporarily relaxing some of those restrictions, like how really beneficial this can be for those local breweries in the area?
Yeah, thanks for the follow-up question. I think actually some of the business owners would be able to speak more to that and be able to detail, in greater detail anyway. But it's partly trying to fix what is really an antiquated approach to how breweries, distilleries, liquor stores, distributors all interact, and where the center of power is, quite honestly, to be able to allow a producer to sell their wares on site, or the cap of which they can sell, even though they're manufacturing it on site. So some of it is really addressing things that I think need to be addressed in the long term. But for at least now continues to level a playing field. We have already deemed liquor stores essential. We have already allowed restaurants to be able to do this. What really is important is to allow people who are actually manufacturing it to be able to do that. It is razor thin margins we're talking about right now. And part of it is even people are selling crowlers and growlers. That's what they can sell on site. There's a shortage of crowlers. At some point, there won't be the vessels to literally put the materials in. So it's both symbolic in terms of recognition that the system that has been in place isn't a level playing field and isn't what's really useful for a modern approach. But it's really about just also the recognition that these businesses, they will close. There is no question about it. And for me, it is everything is hyper local about that. These are not outside investors. This is homegrown investment. This is everything about it is supporting a local economy. So I don't know if that gives you a little more to work with, but I feel pretty strongly about it, as you can tell.
Thanks, Nishay. I hope that answered your question. Not seeing any other questions unless anyone else is going to pop up in the last second. I just wanted to say thank you all again for joining us today. We will be back next week again at 12:30. And again, ahead of time, residents, please feel free to send us your questions if you have them at info@duluthmn.gov. Thanks so much and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Kate.